Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Javad Tuhami and these are the headlines. A joint statement by the US, Russia, China and Pakistan has called on the warring sides in Afghanistan to reduce violence. It urged the Afghan government and the Taliban to engage in meaningful talks for a negotiated settlement. The statement comes after Moscow sponsored talks aimed at accelerating the stalled peace process. Pakistan says it is open to resolving issues with neighboring India based on dialogue. Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa was addressing the inaugural Islamabad Security Dialogue. General Bajwa said the resolution of the Kashmir issue is integral for peace in South Asia. The Army Chief said national security is not just the function of armed forces anymore, but a multifaceted concept. A top US senator has urged Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin to raise the issue of human rights during his visit to New Delhi this week. In a letter, Robert Menendez said India's crackdown on protesting farmers underscores the deteriorating situation of democracy in the country. He also expressed concerns on the rising anti-Muslim sentiment in India and New Delhi's actions in occupied Kashmir. In Armenia, Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has announced snap elections in June 20 to defuse a political crisis sparked by last year's war with Azerbaijan. He is facing calls to resign over his handling of the conflict that ended after Azerbaijan regained control of the area in Nagorno-Karabakh. Last month, the Prime Minister sacked the army chief after accusing him of an attempted coup. Brazil has reported its highest number of daily COVID-19 cases since the pandemic began, with 90,300 cases overnight. Pakistan has registered its largest single-day surge in months, as nearly 3,500 people tested positive in the last 24 hours, while 61 people lost their lives overnight, pushing the toll over 13,700. Globally, there are 2.6 million deaths and more than 121 million infections. And in cricket, South Africa have announced the squad for the upcoming home series against Pakistan starting in the first week of April. The two teams will play 3 one-day internationals and 4 T20 matches. Pakistan has already announced their squad for the tour of South Africa. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. The US, Russia, China and Pakistan have called on warring sides in Afghanistan to reduce violence. They also urge the Afghan government and the Taliban to engage in meaningful talks for a negotiated settlement. As concerns rise globally over the future of Afghanistan ahead of the May 1st deadline for the withdrawal of the foreign troops, Russia hosted a meeting of the extended Troika comprising representatives from 4 regional countries. Afghan political leaders and representatives from the Taliban, Qatar and Turkey participated as guests of honor. In a joint statement after the meeting, the Troika urged participants of intra-Afghan talks to conclude a peace agreement to bring an end to over 4 decades of war. It stressed the need for the Afghan government and the Taliban to ensure that terrorist groups don't use Afghan soil as a launch pad to attack other countries. It also called on the Taliban not to start their spring offensive to avoid casualties. The Taliban, however, complained that the signatories to the Doha peace agreement are not abiding by the deal despite a significant reduction in their operations. The summit comes at a time when the US administration is reviewing its last year's deal with the Taliban, but the State Department has clarified that the Moscow summit does not replace the ongoing peace process under the Doha deal. 9 Afghan security force members have been killed in a helicopter crash in central Medan, Wardak province. The defense ministry says a probe is underway into the Mi-17 crash. But a provincial official told reporters the helicopter was hit by a rocket while taking off. Meanwhile, in Kabul, 4 civilians have been killed and 9 injured in a blast targeting a bus carrying government employees. The Afghan Information and Technology Ministry says they were renting the bus, but a ministry advisor, Abdul Samad Hamid Poya, said it was unclear at the moment who the victims are. No group has claimed the responsibility for the attack yet. Pakistan's Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa says his country is open to resolving all issues with India through dialogue. He was addressing a first ever security dialogue in Islamabad. General Bajwa said India-Pakistan ties hold the key to unlock the regional potential by ensuring connectivity between East and West Asia. More in this report.
As the world shifts its focus to the Indo-Pacific region, Pakistan's National Security Division organized a security conference in line with Prime Minister Imran Khan's vision of peace and regional connectivity. Speaking on the day 2 of the conference, Pakistan's Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa termed the resolution of the Kashmir issue vital for peace in South Asia. He said India should create a conducive environment, particularly in occupied Kashmir, for dialogue.
We are ready to improve our environment by resolving all our outstanding issues with our neighbors through dialogue in a dignified and peaceful manner. However, it is important to state that this choice is deliberate and based on rationality and not as a result of any pressure. In our sincere desire to recast Pakistan's image as a peace-loving nation and a useful member of international community.
General Bajwa also called for a multilateral, regional and global approach to dealing with security challenges. He said that unsettled issues in the region are dragging it back into poverty and underdevelopment. Commenting on the peace deal between the US and the Taliban, the Army Chief attributed it to Pakistan's collaboration and support for the peace process, which paved the way for intra-Afghan dialogue.
Our robust role in current quest for peace in Afghanistan is proof of our goodwill and understanding of our global and moral obligations. Our close collaboration and crucial support for peace process has led to the historic agreement between Taliban and US and paved the way for intra-Afghan dialogue.
The Army Chief said Pakistan is working on sustainable development after combating terrorism and extremism. For the purpose, he said Pakistan has reduced its defense expenditures to avoid becoming part of an arms race. He went on to say that Pakistan's geostrategic location and a transformed vision have made it a country of immense and diverse potential, which could contribute to regional development and prosperity.
And for more on this, we are joined by Lieutenant General Naeem Khalid Lodi, retired. So thank you very much for your time at Indus News. Pakistan's Army Chief says India should create conducive environment to resolve all outstanding issues with Pakistan through talks. How do you think India might respond to this statement?
I think whatever Army Chief said today was a follow-up what our Prime Minister said yesterday while inaugurating this the first session of this conference. I think this has been Pakistan's constant stance that we would like to negotiate with India, with all neighbors, as a matter of fact, especially with India, they being a very big country, very just next door to us, about peace and prosperity of the region as a whole. As our Prime Minister also keeps reiterating, and it was again told by Army Chief also, that it is the regions that develop and not individual countries. And peace actually is good for the entire this region, for all the people, more than 1.5 billion people of South Asia. So I think the Pakistan's offer, this is a renewed offer, I would say, but not a new one. As far as Indian intransigence is concerned, whether they are likely to react positively, I can't say much about it. There's only one indicator which gives us a little bit of hope, and that is the recent ceasefire between India and Pakistan Army on the Azad Kashmir border. If that is taken a cue, maybe India has realized this thing that there's no fun in having a continuous standoff. They will gain nothing. Pakistan is not going to succumb under the pressure. So maybe some sanity prevails. I think along with this, we should keep on appealing the Indian civil society and keep asking them to tell their government what is good for these people of this area. That might work. Other things are likely to take some time, whatever world is trying, whatever Pakistan is trying diplomatically. But let us keep our fingers crossed and let us see how these things respond.
So General Bajwa said unsettled disputes in South Asia are keeping the region from moving forward. What do you say on this?
I think, and he said that there is only one dispute which is of grave nature, and that he said is Kashmir. And he even, I would say that reiterated what the Prime Minister said yesterday, that if India reverts to that, the position of 5th August 2019, before that, whatever was the state of Jammu and Kashmir, Pakistan would open the dialogue, and we are ready to talk on all matters. And a peaceful resolution of Kashmir can actually pave a great way for the prosperity of these people. But General Bajwa also said that we can first tackle the easier part. For example, he said, what about Sir Creek and what about Siachen and such like things. The only thing is that India should be ready to talk, and of course they should be ready to talk on Kashmir also, and then the resolution of Kashmir can take some time. But there's just readiness to talk and have dialogue with us can resolve many other issues also. So he was very right that if we want to look at the future of 1.5 billion people of this region, probably talking is the only right answer.
General Lodi, the Army Chief said CPAC remains central to Pakistan's vision, but only seeing Pakistan through the CPAC prism is also misleading. Would you like to shed a little bit of more light on this?
I think in certain quarters there was an impression as if Pakistan will embrace CPAC in a way that as if we are going to cut all our relations with everybody else, which was a very distorted view, I would say. Pakistan has long, relations with Europe, with America, with Middle East, and whether these countries like CPAC or not, we would not like to abandon all our economic and political relations with everyone around the world just because of CPAC. I think he clarified this thing that whereas CPAC is important for us, there's no doubt about that, but it is not that CPAC is the only thing that we'll be banking upon. That is a great booster of our economy. But we would like to invite all other countries also to become stakeholders, not only in CPAC but also in Pakistan in some other way. So I think he clarified this position very candidly and openly, that Pakistan is not solely and only banking on CPAC. CPAC is one of our rather the biggest, economic boosters. But it doesn't mean that we will not have economic ties with other countries, or we will not like to have other countries to join CPAC. I think that was the message.
Lieutenant General Naeem Khalid Lodi retired. Thank you very much for your time at Indus News. We really appreciate that. And now moving on, Chairman of the U.S. Foreign Relations Committee has urged the Pentagon chief to raise the issue of human rights during his trip to India. In a letter to Lloyd Austin, Senator Bob Menendez said the ongoing crackdown on protesting farmers highlights the deteriorating situation of democracy in India. He said India is intimidating its journalists and government critics who dare to speak against the government's policies. He also expressed concerns on the rising anti-Muslim sentiment in India and New Delhi's actions in occupied Kashmir. He said the US-India partnership must rest on New Delhi's adherence to democratic values. Menendez also urged Lloyd Austin to take up the issue of India's planned purchase of Russian S-400 missile defense system. Austin is the first ever US defense secretary to include India on his maiden foreign trip. China has urged the United States to work and engage with Beijing in a constructive attitude of sincerity. This comes ahead of the first in-person meeting between the top diplomats of Beijing and Washington after President Joe Biden took office. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian said grouping up and pressuring China is totally meaningless. At a daily news briefing, Zhao said there is no room for compromise on Beijing's core interests. He said the topic of a potential meeting between Chinese President Xi Jinping and the US President Joe Biden is not on the meeting's agenda. But he added both the sides can discuss any issue of common interest, including high-level exchanges. Meanwhile, a Chinese delegation led by Foreign Minister Wang Yi has arrived in Alaska for the summit. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the U.S. will consider both diplomatic and pressure options against North Korea. This comes hours after Pyongyang ruled out any talks until Washington changed its hostile policies. Blinken said Washington will complete its North Korea policy review in the coming weeks. He made the remarks at a briefing after a meeting with South Korean officials in Seoul. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin was also present at the meeting. In a joint statement, both the sides vowed to work together on issues including climate change, the pandemic, and North Korea. Earlier, Pyongyang criticized Washington's attempts to make contact, calling it a cheap trick. Foreign ministers of G7 and EU have condemned Russia's continued actions to undermine Ukraine's sovereignty. In a joint statement, the ministers called on Russia to fulfill its international commitments for regional peace, including the Minsk Agreement. They reaffirmed their unwavering support for Ukraine's sovereignty. The statement came on the 7th anniversary of Russia's illegal and illegitimate annexation of Crimea and the city of Sevastopol. In Armenia, Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has announced snap elections in June to defuse the country's political crisis. Tensions ran high after he accused the army chief of attempting a coup and removed him from his post. The army has earlier asked Pashinyan to step down over his handling of last year's war with Azerbaijan. Protests broke out against the Prime Minister in November when he signed a Russia-brokered pact to end 6 weeks of fighting for Nagorno-Karabakh. Under the deal, Yerevan agreed to hand over swathes of territory to Azerbaijan, which many in Armenia see as a national humiliation. However, Pashinyan defied calls for his resignation. It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Russia's President Vladimir Putin says President Joe Biden's remarks about him reflect U.S. own past and current problems. He pointed at America's past history of slaughtering Native Americans and slavery. Biden earlier in an interview termed Russia's president as a killer. He had also warned that Putin will pay the price for alleged meddling in last year's elections in the U.S. The revelations regarding elections meddling were made in a U.S. intelligence report. Russia dismissed the accusations and recalled its ambassador in Washington for consultations. In Mali, 33 soldiers were killed and 14 others wounded in an attack on a military convoy in the Gao region. In a statement, the army said 20 assailants out of around 100 were killed. It said the assailants ambushed the procession in the country's volatile north. The army said the UN peacekeeping mission in Mali helped evacuate the wounded soldiers. While the French mission helped secure the area, no group has claimed responsibility for the attack so far. The United Nations has agreed to Ethiopia's request for a joint probe into country's northern Tigray region. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights spokesperson Jonathan Fowler said an investigation plan is in the works over possible war crimes in Tigray. Fowler said the Human Rights Office and Ethiopian Rights Agency will jointly pursue the inquiry. He said the plan includes required resources and practical modalities to launch the missions as soon as possible. Last week, Ethiopia's foreign ministry said it is ready to work with international experts to conduct investigations on allegations of abuses. Fighting between the government and rebel Tigray leaders has killed thousands of people and caused thousands of evacuations. The Arab coalition in Yemen says the Houthis have misinterpreted the U.S. decision to remove the group from the terrorist organization's list. In an interview, coalition spokesperson Brigadier General Turki al-Maliki said this has led to an increased Houthi attacks. He said Houthis are the first terrorist group that has obtained ballistic missiles, UAVs, cruise missiles, and bomb-laden USVs. He added the Houthis want to practice their ideology and malign activity under the umbrella of a Yemeni government. Representatives of 14 Palestinian factions have signed a code of honor to accept the results of the upcoming parliamentary elections. The groups, including Fatah and Hamas, agreed to strengthen national unity in the second round of intra-national dialogue in Egypt. In a statement, the leaders said they will ensure high transparency for the electoral process in the Palestinian territories. They also agreed on completing the formation of the Palestinian Unified Leadership on Popular Resistance. President Mahmoud Abbas announced to hold legislative, presidential and national councils elections in Palestine after 16 years. Brazil has reported its record high number of daily COVID-19 cases with 90,300 testing positive overnight. Globally, there are over 2.6 million deaths and more than 121 million infections. More in this report.
Record spikes in deaths and cases and mutating variants are making the second COVID March even more devastating. In the United States, 2 strains first detected in California state were officially declared as variants of concern. Meanwhile, President Joe Biden's administration announced a new $2.25 billion initiative to address health equity issues related to COVID-19. Over in the south, Chile recorded an alarming increase in hospitalizations amid reports that the vaccination drive encouraged the public to disregard SOPs. Meanwhile, medical staff in Brazil's Sao Paulo state are facing increasing pressure as cases rise to record highs.
There is a waiting list at practically all hospitals with ICU beds, as people know. This creates a problem for health workers because we are already tired. And we've been doing this for a year now, so it causes additional stress. The stress of knowing that we are not helping everyone who needs us. The stress of knowing that when a patient leaves, I already have 4, 5, 6 or even more patients. Depending on the hospital you are in, your queue is bigger or small. But there are always waiting lists at all hospitals.
The European Union is considering allowing its 450 million people vaccinated or not to travel freely across the bloc within months. Poland has announced nationwide restrictions as the daily tally of new cases reached the highest levels this year. Meanwhile, Britain is set to see a glitch in its vaccination drive due to a cut in the manufacturing supply. Foreign Minister Dominic Raab accused the European Commission of brinkmanship over its threat to ban exports of COVID-19 vaccines.
I think it takes some explaining because the world's watching. We've, all of us, including with our European friends, been saying throughout the pandemic that it would be wrong to curtail or interfere with lawfully contracted supply. We all said it last year on PPE. We've been saying it this year on vaccines and other things.
Over in Asia, Japan has approved a plan not to extend the state of emergency imposed in Tokyo, set to expire on 21st of March. Taiwan has completed checks on its first batch of AstraZeneca vaccines and the first administrations may start soon.
Pakistan's Minister of Planning and Development says there has been a sharp spike in COVID-19 cases in the country. In a tweet, Asad Umar said the number of hospitalizations and people in critical care is increasing fast. Umar said if SOP's compliance does not improve, the government will be forced to place stronger restrictions. This comes as Pakistan registered its largest single-day surge in months as nearly 3,500 people tested positive overnight. The health ministry said 61 people lost their lives to the virus in the last 24 hours. It said the number of deaths has risen to 13,717. The ministry added nearly 616,000 cases have been detected so far, out of which more than 577,000 people have recovered. Pakistan and Kuwait have pledged to strengthen bilateral cooperation in diverse fields. Kuwait's Foreign Minister Sheikh Dr. Ahmed Nasser Al Mohammed Al Sabah called on his Pakistani counterpart in Islamabad. The two discussed ways to enhance people-to-people linkages and other matters of mutual interest. Qureshi briefed the visiting dignitary on the economic potential of the China-Pakistan economic corridor. He invited Kuwait to benefit from the investment opportunities in Pakistan. The foreign minister also highlighted Islamabad's efforts in support of the Afghan peace process. Al-Sabah hailed Pakistan's support to Kuwait, particularly during the pandemic. Pakistan's national war hero Muhammad Mahmud Alam is being remembered on his 8th death anniversary for his unforgettable services for the country. In the 1965 war with India, Alam shot down 5 Indian warplanes in just 30 seconds. His world record of shooting down most planes in a war still remains unbeaten. For his remarkable show of brilliance, he received several awards, including Sitare-e-Jurat. He retired in 1982 as an Air Commodore and was the first ever Pakistani fighter pilot to top the Hall of Famous list at the PAF Museum in Karachi. Exiled Belarus opposition leader Svetlana Tikhanovskaya has launched an online vote to muster support for talks with the Belarusian government. The statement appeared to be an attempt to rekindle the anger that brought thousands onto the streets after a controversial presidential vote. In a tweet, she said the Organization for the Security and Cooperation in Europe and the UN are ready to act as mediators in talks with Belarus. She said the crisis in our country can only be resolved with internationally mediated negotiations. The exiled leader said talks can begin in May with a view to hold an election in the autumn. Tikhanovskaya had run against Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko in 2020 election, but the disputed result triggered mass protests. Following the vote last year, she was forced to flee the country amid a crackdown on critics of the president. Ukraine and Canada have rejected an Iranian report into last year's shooting down of a Ukrainian airliner that killed 176 people. Many of the victims were Canadian citizens or permanent residents. In a statement, Canada's government said the report appears to be incomplete and missing hard facts. It said the report did not attempt to answer critical questions about what truly happened. The government said Ottawa will soon disclose the results of its investigations. Earlier, Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba also rejected the report, calling it a cynical attempt to hide the truth. Kuleba said Iran's probe did not follow international practice and ignored evidence supplied by Ukraine. Prime Minister Mark Rutte has claimed an overwhelming victory in national elections in the Netherlands. Exit polls show Rutte's Liberal Party has won most seats in the parliament after the socially distanced 3-day vote. Rutte told reporters in the parliament that voters have given his party an overwhelming vote of confidence. Being one of the longest-serving prime ministers in Europe, Rutte said he has the energy to serve for another 10 years. His ally, the pro-EU D66, emerged as the second largest party. Meanwhile, the party of Islamophobe and xenophobic leader Geert Wilders lost ground to move into the 3rd place. India's capital, New Delhi, has once again been declared the world's most polluted capital by a Swiss air quality company. Now, residents have expressed their discontent while saying these outcomes are a result of their faults. More in this report.
Smog-covered buildings, congested roads, and the contaminated Yamuna River have turned the life of Delhi residents into a living nightmare. This has been depicted in the report of the Swiss group IQ Air, which named New Delhi the world's most polluted capital for the 3rd straight year. The report's findings are based on the measurement of the concentration of airborne pollutants called PM 2.5.
We should not be surprised at all. Delhi residents are reaping what they sowed. So if we are number 1 on the list of most polluted national capitals in the world, then we are the ones responsible for it.
Prolonged exposure to the toxic PM 2.5 particles can lead to deadly diseases, including cancer and cardiac problems. As per a combined study of Greenpeace Southeast Asia analysis and IQ air pollution caused an estimated 54,000 premature deaths in New Delhi in 2020 alone.
It is getting difficult even to breathe in peace. This is especially harmful to little children, patients with respiratory issues, and heart patients. Dust is the most annoying. Road construction is not proper. Broken roads everywhere are the main contributor to it. The heaps of garbage are breeding ground for disease as well. They are posing many problems for the residents.
According to IQAir, New Delhi's average annual concentration of PM 2.5 in a cubic meter of air for 2020 was a devastating 84.1.
Skydiving is considered to be one of the world's most thrilling sports. However, two Polish daredevils have gone an extra mile and created an aerial competition utilizing the sport and skateboarding. More in this report.
Maya Kuchanska and her compatriot race pilot Lukas Cepelia put their own unique spin on a skateboarding classic. The result is an incredible aerial competition called the game of AIR. In the mountains of Slovenia, Kuchanska jumped from a plane equipped with just a skydiving suit and a parachute, while Cepelia flew right next to her in his Extra 300 plane.
Well, the game of air is something that we came up, and it's aerobatic aircraft doing tricks against the skydiver. I don't think something like this has been done ever before. There's been aerobatic aircraft flying around skydivers, but they were in the wingsuit. So to do it with someone who doesn't have a wingsuit on and has much, much higher vertical rates.
The pair simultaneously performed spectacular aerobatic maneuvers in a bid to outdo each other. AIR is based on the game of skate, where the participants set tricks for each other to complete. A mistake results in the participants gaining one letter from the word, and the first one to get all letters loses.
The game of air was inspired by the game of skate, which is a very popular game amongst skaters. It involves two people, or I guess more people, where they compete against each other and they show a trick, and after that trick the other person tries to do the same trick, and if they do not work out, they get one letter from the word. So in the skater version there's the word skate, we have the word air, and I'm pretty excited.
It was pilot Cepelia who lost this time around, failing to complete a flip twist and collecting the letter R.
More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. Another business updates. The U.S. stocks have declined after a spike in bond yields fueled fears of equity valuations. The tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite dropped as the shares of Apple, Alphabet and Microsoft fell 1%, while Tesla shed 3%. The S&P 500 index also traded nearly 0.5% lower, but the DJI was up over 0.25%. The U.S. jobless claims jumped to over 770,000 despite relaxed economic restrictions. Meanwhile, the oil prices fell for a fifth day after the U.S. stockpile built up and concerns around demand recovery. News just in. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi and his Kuwaiti counterpart Sheikh Dr. Ahmed Nasir Al Mohammed Al Sabah are holding a joint press conference. Let's watch live.
In challenging COVID-19 times, when they required medical technicians for Kuwait, Pakistan was forthcoming. And looking at the professionalism provided by our doctors and nursing staff, they have expressed an interest of inviting more doctors and nurses and technicians to Kuwait. That is, again, a very welcome development. We've agreed to increase our bilateral trade. We've looked at areas where investments can be promoted in Kuwait and in Pakistan. We've looked at developing linkages between Gwadar and Mubarak Al-Kabir port in Kuwait, and many other areas, multilateral cooperation. We've agreed to support each other in so many areas. And I wanted to thank the Foreign Minister that he accepted my invitation when we met in Niamey on the sidelines of the CFM. He promised to come to Pakistan, and in these challenging COVID times, he is here. He delivered on his promise. And not just delivered on his promise, I have seen in him such warmth, affection for Pakistan, and a willingness to move ahead in our bilateral relations. I want to acknowledge and appreciate the role played by His Excellency the Foreign Minister and the Kuwaiti leadership in diffusing tensions within the GCC. And we've had a discussion over dinner on how things have moved ahead. He was in Riyadh a day before, and he shared the developments that are evolving. And inshallah, we hope with the leadership and the vision provided by them, we can look for, inshallah, a closure in Yemen that Pakistan feels, and the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, has always said, an unnecessary war. We will do our best to bring the Ummah together. So thank you, Foreign Minister. Thank you for coming.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My brother, Makhdoom Shah Mahmoud al-Quraishi, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming this late at night and very abruptly. As my brother Mahmoud has said, I'm here on the invitation of my brother, the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, and under the instructions of the leadership of Kuwait to enhance and promote even further all fields of cooperation between the state of Kuwait and Pakistan. The historical ties that Kuwait has with Pakistan now is above 58 years. And we recall the position of Pakistan, especially in our darkest time. Pakistan was solid in its stance against the Iraqi occupation of Kuwait back in 1990 and stood with us shoulder to shoulder until the liberation of Kuwait, but also in maintaining and implementing United Nations Security Council resolution in maintaining the security, stability, and sovereignty of Kuwait. And after that, now, as we all are facing this pandemic, we truly do think that no one is immune until all of us are immune. And that's why Pakistan, again, with the White Army of Pakistan in the same trench with their Kuwaiti brethren in combating this disease, which is very much appreciated by all Kuwaitis. Today in the morning, I had the honor to meet the Prime Minister of Pakistan, His Excellency Imran Khan, where I delivered a message from His Highness the Prime Minister of Kuwait, Sheikh Sabah Al Khalid. The letter only solidifies the beautiful story that exists between Kuwait and Pakistan and laid forward the orientation of our work for the future. We would like for our relationship to be more institutionalized, and this was the core of our meeting, and to have a clear indicator of the level of cooperations in all fields and sectors and how we can move it and promote it even further. The Pakistani community in Kuwait is an integral part of the development of Kuwait and contributor in our economy, and we are proud of this matter. The issue of visa is being handled seriously, and members of the delegations have met today to discuss the mechanism for this matter. We have discussed also some of the regional and international challenges that we are facing. We truly do thank and commend the position of Pakistan during the GCC rift in maintaining neutrality and support of the late His Highness Sheikh Sabah mediation effort and Kuwait mediation effort. And thank God now that this issue has been solved. We thank Pakistan for their position in this regard. And also we have discussed means and ways to implement and strengthen our cooperation in regional and international organizations, among them OIC and also United Nations. I truly do thank my brother Mahmoud for all of the hospitality that I have received with my delegation, and we are looking forward for a beautiful future ahead. Thank you, sir.
The Honorable Foreign Minister have agreed to take few questions. So please introduce your channel and also indicate who your question is addressed to. Ji Namra.
Thank you. My name is Namra. I am from Pakistan Television. Sir, my question is to the Foreign Minister of Kuwait. Pakistan has recently sent some medical professionals to Kuwait. How is your experience with that, and do you intend to cooperate more with Pakistan in this area? Thank you.
Pakistan not only has sent this time, but also during the direst moments last year, when all of the countries around the world were perturbed by this new pandemic and were just trying to navigate in a very dark and treacherous waters. They have sent a medical team to help us in combating this disease, and it's still going on. Our impression, and here I want to be more objective, is it's not us, but all of the caretaker receivers have expressed their great admiration for the high-level skills, professionalism, empathy and sympathy that the Pakistani medical team have done in Kuwait. And we are even looking for future cooperation in this field.
Thank you, sir. Saima Shabir from Arab News. It's a pleasure to have you here, sir. Thank you very much for your visit. Sir, my question is about the visas. As you said that the issue has been resolved and sorted out. And secondly, sir, Mr. Qureshi, you have told that a roadmap, proper roadmap has been discussed between the two foreign ministers. Kindly, if you can, sir, give a little detail about that roadmap and about the trade between two countries, how to enhance that. Thank you so much.
You want to go? Well, we discussed this morning the level of bilateral trade between Kuwait and Pakistan. Our bilateral trade is slightly over $1 billion, but it is nowhere near its potential. We feel by better institutional arrangements and more engagement, it can go up many-fold. We also see good prospects for investments, and I shared with the foreign minister the friendly regime that we have in place, the high rate of returns people are making who've invested in Pakistan, the ease of doing business and how Pakistan's ranking has gone up, and why Pakistan should be an attractive destination for Kuwaiti investment. I also shared with him the opportunities that special economic zones are offering, the incentives that are being offered, the Gwadar zone and other, zones that we are coming up under CPEC. I also discussed that, the connectivity that it will promote. We have now a clear roadmap, and we can share that with you. It's not a classified document. We can share it with the media, what we've agreed upon, how to move forward in different areas, in promotion of cultural ties, people-to-people linkages, in enhancing our cooperation in the field of education. We feel that we can contribute a lot, and I'm happy to share with you that the trajectory of our military cooperation is very positive, and I see further engagement in that affair also.
Thank you so much. And I would only reiterate what my dear brother, the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, mentioned. There are lots of potential in cooperation that's still untapped or untapped successfully. So this is what we are concentrating on. We think also that even the pandemic and COVID is a crisis, but it's also a means of and opportunities for all of us. Enhancing, as I said, the medical institutions, sharing expertise in this regard, learning from this such a dire experience, to have a more immune, potentially, eventually, if such a pandemic reoccurs in the future, is important for both countries. And also, when we're mentioning food security, we think that one of the repercussions of this pandemic, not only for Kuwait and for Pakistan, but the whole world, is food security. So complementarity policy in this matter is very important, crucial, and we have discussed this matter. Education, but also IT integration is very important, and those three sectors are some of the sectors that we would enhance our cooperation in this matter. Regarding the visa issue, the relationship between Kuwait and Pakistan is a historical and strong relationship. And rest assured, we don't want it to be singled out only by this matter. And that's why we have had the instruction of my leadership to handle this matter seriously. And now there is a mechanism for this issue to be solved once and for all. The skilled labor force of Pakistan are contributing in our development, as I have said, and we are proud of all of them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Anas Malik from The Correspondent. My questions are for the visiting dignitary. So, two-part questions. Firstly, does Kuwait have any plans of enhancing its investment within the country, within Pakistan? And if so, what are those areas of interest? That is number one. Number two, you mentioned about the rift between GCC. There's a rift that is regionally there as well between the two neighbors. You're coming from India. Would Kuwait want to play its role to mediate a solution or a peace between Pakistan and India, because Kashmir has been that sticking point? Would Kuwait want to mediate, because you're coming directly from India to Pakistan? So my question's on that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Regarding enhancing investment, we think that now especially the legislations in Pakistan are very encouraging for foreign investment. Kuwait and others. We have a very vivid private sector in Kuwait, and they have also an adventurous soul. Pakistan is very close to us. It only needs some avenues to further put more awareness.
Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi and his Kuwaiti counterpart Sheikh Dr. Ahmad Nasir Al Mohammed Al Sabah are holding a joint press conference in Islamabad, and Kuwaiti Foreign Minister is on a 2-day official visit to Pakistan. Will continue to update regarding his visit in Pakistan, but it's time for the headlines for this hour.